cheap budget gaming rigs that look good on the box often end up feeling like a regret after you fire them up, especially when you've spent hard-earned cash on a system that can't keep up with the games you love. I've been in that spot more than once, and that's why I'm not just looking at the headline specs of the WIWB gaming desktop PC. I am asking whether it actually feels like a smarter buy for someone who wants solid performance without the DIY hassle. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first saw the WIWB desktop, the first thing that caught my eye was the promise of a next-level RTX 5060 paired with a Ryzen 7 4700LE. Those are parts that, on paper, sit comfortably in the mid-range gaming tier. The real question, though, is how that translates to everyday use gaming at 1080p or 1440p, streaming a session, and still having enough horsepower for a few video editing tasks in the same day. I spent a couple of evenings setting it up, connecting it to a 27-inch 144Hz monitor, and running a mix of titles from Fortnite to Cyberpunk 2077 while also opening Premiere Pro for a quick cut. The experience felt surprisingly balanced. Boot times were almost immediate. The 1TB NVMe SSD lives up to its ultra-fast boot and file transfers claim, loading Windows in under 15 seconds and pulling large game files into memory with barely a pause. That's a huge quality of life win for anyone who doesn't want to stare at a loading screen for ages. The SSD also gives you plenty of room for a handful of modern games and some media files. If you're a heavy collector, you'll eventually need an external drive, but for a starter library it's generous. Graphics performance is where the RTX 5060 shines. In my tests, Apex Legends ran at a steady 140 frames per second on high settings at 1080p, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider held around 80 frames per second on a mix of high and medium settings at 1440p. It's not going to match a 3080, but for most gamers who aren't chasing 4K ultra-high refresh rates, it delivers a smooth experience. The card also supports DLSS, which helped push frame rates higher without sacrificing visual fidelity, a useful trick in newer titles that are getting more demanding. The CPU, a Ryzen 7 4700LE, feels right at home with the GPU. When I switched over to streaming Valorant while playing, the CPU kept the encode workload stable and didn't throttle the game frame rate. In a quick Premiere Pro test, rendering a 5-minute 1080p sequence took about half the time of my old laptop, proving that the system can juggle content creation tasks without feeling like a bottleneck. Connectivity is another practical win. Wi-Fi 6 is built in, and I noticed a noticeably lower latency when I was on a crowded home network compared to my older 802.11 AC router. That matters if you're gaming online or doing a live stream where every millisecond counts. The desktop also includes a good mix of ports: USB-C, a couple of USB 3.1 slots, HDMI, and DisplayPort so you can hook up peripherals without needing a hub. Now for the trade-offs. The system ships with 16 GB of DDR4 RAM, which is enough for most current games and multitasking, but it's not future-proof. If you plan on moving to 4K gaming or doing more intensive video work, you'll likely want to upgrade to 32 GB sooner rather than later. The good news is that the RAM is user-replaceable, but the case design makes access a bit tighter than a custom-built tower, so you'll need a screwdriver and a bit of patience. Cooling is decent but not silent. The stock fans do a respectable job keeping temperatures in check. The GPU stayed around 70°C under load, but you'll hear a faint hum during long sessions. If a whisper-quiet environment is a must for you, you might have to invest in aftermarket fans or a better case, which adds cost beyond the initial price. Speaking of cost, the WIWB desktop is priced to sit right above entry-level pre-builts but below the high-end custom rigs. The value comes from the balance of components: a GPU that can handle the current generation of games, a CPU that won't choke on streaming or editing, and an SSD that removes the old-school waiting game. You're not paying for a flagship-grade GPU, but you're also not overpaying for a GPU you'll never fully use. That sweet spot is why the 5-star rating from 42 reviewers makes sense. People who bought it seem satisfied with the price-to-performance ratio. Who should buy this? If you're a gamer who wants to jump into AAA titles now, stream a few hours a week, and maybe dabble in video editing without building a PC from scratch, this is a solid contender. It's also a good fit for remote workers who need a reliable workstation for spreadsheets, video calls, and occasional heavy workloads. The pre-built nature means you can power it up out.